Yes. Hey guys, it's TJ. Super excited to be here with a person I'm very honored to call a friend. He is insane. His career in his young life, he's done a whole lot. So I take a lot longer in talking about everything, but I'm going to talk about a few things. You know him from, of course, Broadway's Wicked, Bridges of Madison County, Anastasia, currently Jagged Little Pill, off-Broadway, Carrie, Dogfight, and then on TV, many things, including Law & Order, SVU, Blue Bloods, Quantico, and of course, the unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Please welcome the incredible Derek Klena. Woo!
Hey guys, thanks so much for having
I love it. Oh, gotta love a good applause, you know? Hey, I miss that sound. I miss that sound. This is nice, but I miss this.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Derek, I want to talk to you a little bit about, before we get into the journey, this incredible journey that you've had. I want to talk to you about your journey to New York. So you obviously are a Southern California native and very heavily involved in the arts family. Now, for you, when did you decide it was like it's time to move to New York? And did you go with your equity card? Did you go with an agent? Did you just go and hope and pray? How'd that all go for you?
Yeah, everybody has their own track to New York. Mine was very roundabout and kind of unexpected. I was going to UCLA at the time. Of course, I grew up doing a lot of Southern California theater. Sports and theater were a huge part of my life. Very High School Musical-esque. And then I actually got into UCLA for theater, ended up having the opportunity to play baseball my freshman year, switched out of theater, played baseball, decided that I wasn't going to play professional baseball, then went into psychology at UCLA. That's when I did a competition in LA called LA's Next Great Stage Star. Yeah. Still exists today. Yeah. And from that competition, I made the top 5, was able to do my own show, my own cabaret performance. That was part of the winnings. And part of that was, well, first of all, I got an agent out of that competition, which was super helpful to start doing more regional theater in the area. But part of my show at the time, Catch Me If You Can, was doing their out of town in Seattle. And I had seen Aaron Tveit singing Goodbye, the big 11 o'clock number on YouTube. And I worked with my accompanist, music director, James Lent. Shout out to James. If we could put this together, I was like, do you think you could put this together so we could sing it in my show? And he's like, yeah. He's a music genius. He figured it out. We did it in the show. The show ended up getting reviewed by Broadway World, Don Grigware. Shout out. And he put into the review that I sang the song from Catch Me If You Can, written by Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman, tagged their names. So then Mark Shaman got a Google alert that his name was mentioned in this thing, and obviously the music wasn't out yet. So he's like, who's this kid that's singing my music? And he ended up Facebook messaging me just saying, I heard you sang the song. Did you sing it good? And I was like, at first I was like, who is this guy? I was like, I don't know who it is. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, this is crazy. So then I wrote back, I was like, I think so. And he's like, well, if you sing it again, we're going to be looking for Aaron Tveit's standby when we move to Broadway. We'd love to hear, you sing it. Then I got asked to do another benefit concert in Orange County where they wanted me to sing the song, and they got the sheet music from Mark officially. But they were like, before he signs off on you singing this again, he wants to hear you first. So can you record it for us and send it off? So I went to my buddy Patrick Copeland's recording studio.
Oh man, another
Patrick Copeland.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, it was a team effort. So we put together this recording of me singing Goodbye, just a clean track with the piano, and sent it off. And sure enough, Mark was like, "This is fantastic. I'm going to forward it to our casting directors over at Telsey, and we'd love to have you fly out for final callbacks later this year." And that was all. It was crazy. But this was all during my sophomore year at UCLA. I ended up flying out later in the summer, went through like a pretty intense, you know, audition process when I was in the city. Yeah, it didn't work out for that. They thought I was a little young and a little green for such a big role undertaking, but Telsey was like, there's a couple other projects we think you'd be really right for, one of which was Carrie the Musical. So I sent in a tape from LA to New York, flew out for multiple callbacks. This was all during my sophomore year. And
Not stressful at all.
yeah, no, I was a bad student. So, but it's okay, it worked out. So I ended up flying out for callbacks, and that's how I booked Carrie. I booked the lab from a tape and then flying out for callbacks. And then once I flew out, did the 2-week lab, flew back to California, really had no intention of moving out to New York. Ended up getting the offer for the off-Broadway company during the summer between my sophomore year and my junior year. And that's when I kind of had to decide, I'm going to have to take time off school. So, you know, when do I do that? Is this an official move? I wasn't really set on officially moving at that time. I did my fall quarter at school my junior year. I intended on taking the winter quarter off to pursue doing this 3-month run of Carrie. Carrie was an amazing experience. My first time living in New York. It was crazy. And then once that was kind of winding down towards the end of the run, I got an audition for Dogfight. Ended up going in for like 5 or 6 times for Dogfight. I got that job, and that's kind of what solidified me staying in New York. I was like,
yeah,
this is a
monumental moment for you.
It was, yeah, it was crazy. It was like, that was the big turning point. It was, I'd been out here for 3 months, had that amazing opportunity, and kind of just took it and ran with it at that point. It was crazy.
I have to say, Don Grigware actually showed up in this room right after we just sung his praises. Yeah, we just talked about you, Don. So anyway, I'm glad to see you here. We miss you, and miss, of course, your review of all of that's going on here in Southern California. Anyway, so do you have, I know that everyone has a roundabout way of getting there, and obviously your way was unique, as everyone's is, but do you have, before we go back, and because we are going to go back to Carrie and kind of talk through a lot of these shows in more detail, do you have advice for people that are thinking about moving there? I know there's people that are like, don't move without $10,000, and people are like, $10,000? When am I ever going to have $10,000? You know, what's your advice? Do you say, some people also say, don't move without your equity card, don't move without an agent. You know, what are you?
Yeah, I meant to say that when I was, I booked Carrie. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you should focus on the equity card as much, because, you know, when you are doing regional theater in other parts of the country, such as Southern California, there's only so many equity contracts in a company sometimes. So I recommend, don't stress too much about the equity thing. I think getting an agent and having an agent is probably the biggest obstacle and thing that you want to kind of accomplish while moving to New York or early on in your stay in New York. I think that is super helpful for gaining appointments. I got my equity card by booking into Carrie. So I had gotten the job at Carrie, and that's kind of what gave me my equity card. So I received it that way.
Which is like not a typical, I mean, there are people that do go and they're like, Broadway debut, get their equity card. We all know people that have done that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's like, if you don't have your equity card, or certainly if you don't have an agent, you spend all your time waiting outside on the pavement, hoping to be seen. Of course, you can go to do the regional theater auditions much more easily, because they have to book non-union talent. But even then, the ones that are booking in New York are largely, they're looking for the equity contracts, and they're booking local non-union people. So it's definitely an interesting game, New York, because it's so condensed with so much talent. But amazing that your journey is truly incredible. And you can also see, I want you to talk about, as we go through show to show too, like, so people can see how important relationships are, because you can see almost in anyone's career, and yours being one that's like that, you can see you can connect dots from relationship moments that help get from one gig to the next gig to the next gig. You know what I mean? So just in talking about how you successfully, did that, you have worked with incredible legends. I mean, you are still a young man, and you've had working with legends and had a more full career than some people can hope to have in a lifetime. So it's pretty incredible. But so you started in, my little girl decided to sit on a toy table that was not supposed to be sat on. So
oh no.
she's looking at me more. She's
she
just
okay?
yeah, she's sitting there pretending like it didn't happen. She's just kind of like, that didn't happen. Anyway, so going back to 2012, you booked Carrie, and you're in a show with Marin Mazzie. I mean, like the late and great, unbelievable,
Marin Mazzie,
incredible, Marin Mazzie. So, and then also you had Carmen Cusack, who was not who she was at the time. I mean, obviously she
right.
later, became a big thing after her big show. But then also it's where you, I believe, met who later would become your Anastasia, Christy Altamont.
Yeah,
is amazing.
Christy.
So what was that process? I mean, you you got to work on one of Broadway's most historic flops, right? So you get to be among the original crew to bring that back and redevelop it, and then later getting the rights to be done, regionally elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. So was the run planned to be limited? Was that supposed to be like a short limited run? And then what was that like by the time you came onto it, had it pretty much all been worked out what they were going to do different and new songs and this and that? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, it was meant to be a limited run at MCC off Broadway, with hopes that it would be received well and picked up by a producer and eventually have a run on Broadway. That obviously wasn't necessarily the case. So we ended up just doing a limited run, remaking the album, which was amazing. But I definitely I'm glad I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, because I was like a kid in a candy store moving out to New York. Like, this is amazing. Everything in this process is incredible. These people are incredible. Everything's awesome. So like, people that had been around the city were like, oh yeah, I don't know. Like, there were some things that happened in the run that I was like, oh no, this is all great. And they're like, yeah, it shouldn't actually be happening like this, but like, we're just gonna go with it. Like, so naive Derek was like, I don't know. This is like,
this is awesome.
I've ever been a part of. Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking back now, like it was definitely kind of crazy to recreate. Obviously, it was such an iconic show in the 80s that we had to be very strategic and like specific with how we were remaking some of these epic moments. Like the big question, were we going to use actual blood? Right. How do kids today, we had amazing writers, but they wanted to recreate some of these scenes for a modern day. So literally in a room, they were like, this is the scene that we had from years ago. How would you say this today? So we literally go around the room and like recreate these scenes. So having that artistic freedom and being able to contribute like that, I had never experienced before. So that was
cool.
Really educational for me, and knowing just kind of the process of developing a show. Because even though it had been done before, we were basically redeveloping the show and building it from scratch and trying to redefine these characters that weren't necessarily super successful before. So I learned a lot during that experience. Like you said, Marin Mazzie is incredible. Having her as kind of the leader of that company for my first experience there was I'll never forget that and what it did for me. And also having a group of such young, amazingly talented people. I think I was super lucky to be thrust into a company that was so young that I could relate to. And I instantly had this group of friends who I felt like I could connect with moving to the city, which you don't often have. And I was super lucky to have that, is this instant community of people that I could be like immersed in. So that entire experience was incredible. And
did you ever get
I learned
footage
so much
from the original production?
No, I like scoured I scoured the internet trying to look for
Dude,
little snippets. Do you
I
have the
have,
original?
I have a Act One original. It's only performance, so it's amazing that it exists. But the shower sequence, these showers like
Oh my
flew
gosh.
in from the top. It was the most wild, weird thing you've ever seen in your life. But yeah,
It
it's
isn't. There was like an epic staircase at
yes,
the end of the show, right?
yes,
Yeah, like a
yeah.
big white staircase,
It
super
was
gaudy.
it's wild. Yeah. Do you have before we move on
Mhm.
from this show, do you have anything you can share about working with Marin and what, aside from obviously I'm sure that having her, be this grounding force, in a show that needed that, you know what I mean? Like, and to have just such a dynamic and incredible, I saw her uh in Next to Normal playing opposite her husband, and it was
Oh my
like
gosh.
nothing I had ever seen.
Yeah, I wish I would have seen that.
It was unbelievable. What was it like? Yeah, working with her. Do you have a specific story or anecdote you can share?
I don't have any specific story that defined like the experience with her, but it was the first time that she was obviously kind of the biggest name in our company and
Yeah.
somebody who had obviously the largest resume, had been around. She knew a lot of the people in the room. She was definitely the leader. I had never been a part of a company yet where that was a thing, where there was a person in the room who immediately took charge and ownership of not only her track, but she knew that that was her role. She had the leadership role in this company to show a bunch of young bucks, how
I hear it.
to, she was that guiding force that always kept everyone on the straight and narrow. When things got chaotic, as they do during a creative process, and people are screaming across the room, and tech is so stressful,
Yeah.
she was the calming force in it all, and never wavered. She she was just like the picture of professionalism and kindness and everything that you
Would want her to be.
hope to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And just watching her and the way she carried herself and performed day in day out, and how she treated everybody off stage, I think that's what also defined her. Is not only was she beautiful and incredible on stage, but she's one of the nicest people I've ever gotten to work with. And there was just like just such a warmth about her that made her super unique, and makes you want to be like that.
Yeah, everyone says
Part of,
the fish rots from the head, and
yeah.
she always created an environment. I've heard from anyone that's worked with her that was always, like you said, warm and positive, and that's everything that you need in a leading woman or man or whomever, anyone that's
Yeah.
at the top. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then lastly, did you get to meet Stephen King? Did he come around?
No, he
Oh.
came, he came, but it was one of those things where like they were like, "Oh, Stephen King was here today." Oh, great. What? And so, no, I never got to meet him. I don't know if anybody in our company did, or maybe they saw him, but yeah, we didn't get to meet him,
All
unfortunately.
right.
That would have been cool.
So not long after that, you had another.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. You had another windfall and getting to originate a role in a show, a little show called Dogfight, also off Broadway. But what an important, based off of the film of the same name. What an important piece that was or is, and getting to work with another Southern California native, my brother's ex-girlfriend before he didn't realize he didn't like girls, Lindsay Mendez.
No way. I did not know that. That's
We were all
incredible.
in Footloose at Musical Theater West together, and
That is awesome.
and he was Willard and she was Rusty, and showmanced it up. It was so funny. But
That's amazing.
anyway,
That's
so Lindsay and Annalie Ashford, and of course working with
Mhm.
Pasek and Paul before they were Pasek and Paul. What an incredible experience. So let's talk. And you went from being kind of the good guy in Carrie, this boy who didn't want to take her, but then ended up, we all know, right? And then
Yeah.
now you end up being quite the opposite, initially, of course, in Dogfight.
Yeah.
What was that like for you working on that show? What was it like working with Pasek and Paul? I mean, how was it embodying that that person, and yeah, what was that overall experience just like for you, and how the audience received it, and all that?
Yeah, I mean, Carrie will for always be like my first experience in New York, and impacted me in a way, just moving out to the city and being initiated into like this community. But Dogfight, I would have to say, was and still is the most, I learned the most from that process, and I feel like it changed me. It that was like the turning of another like chapter of what I wanted to do and what I could believe I could do. Because Joe Mantello, I mean, I had just seen Joe do The Normal Heart on Broadway, which he should have won a Tony for, and which
Yeah,
was
he's
one of the most
amazing.
incredible performances. Yeah, he's just incredible actor and director. So getting to work with him in the room, he like met me at the door. There was a way that he approached an audition room. First of all, he hates the process. He hates the process of auditioning. He's like, if I didn't have to audition people, I wouldn't. It's just,
Yeah,
it's a horrible experience, because he himself as an actor is like, it's just the worst. So
it's
I
the worst
hate
stuff.
putting people through that. So he really made it a point to make you feel comfortable. And that meant a lot to me, especially being, I had just turned 20. I didn't know what I didn't know. I walk into a room filled with this insane group of people, and he met me at the door, and he was like, "Hey, do you have any questions? Like, is there anything you want to start with first?" He had like a little meeting before the meeting, which was really unique and cool. So he kind of set the stage and comfort level of the room. Um, the audition process was crazy. I actually was the first one to get cast, so I got to read with a lot of the
Wow.
Rose Fennies, and Lindsay in her final callback, which was another unbelievably. Um, I learned so much from that experience, getting to watch people that I knew and friends that I knew walk into a room that they didn't know I was in. And so to watch the audition process from that side of the table, and watch just a simple presence of a person walking in the room already sets the precedent for like how this audition is going to go. I never knew how important walking in as yourself, not really putting on anything, how impactful that could be and how refreshing that can be. Because I watched some friends of mine walk into the room with like a thing, and I was like, oh no, that's not you. Like, don't do that.
So
And
I
it
have to
showed.
interject real quick, because we've literally been just to connect for anyone. There's many people who have been tuning into a lot of these sessions, and and I've said this obviously sitting behind the table and watching it, but just to reiterate, you just heard him say, "Be yourself. Do not put anything else on. People want to see you be you. Do not do like some teachers are like." Creating this shell of a person, in schools, where that's just not what books you a job. They want to see you to be, you be you. And if you are what they are looking for, you will get that job.
Right.
Yeah, that's very important. I had to like tag in on that. And while you're talking
No,
about
it's
the
really
auditions,
important.
while you're talking about the auditions real quick, we had a related question that I think is great in the chat. That was, how did you approach that audition process? Because there's no cast album, there's no reference, there's nothing aside from, I mean, you did have a film, obviously,
Right.
to know where the show would have been going, but how did you approach that audition process, when you're going in for something brand new?
Yeah, when you're going in for something that doesn't exist, or music that doesn't exist, the song I had to sing was Come Back, the big 11 o'clock number. It's a tricky sing. All I got
A pass or
was
fail moment. It's like, you can sing it or you can't. Yeah.
exactly. It was like, well, if they could sing this, then they could sing most of the stuff in the show. So that was kind of like the weeder song. They like weeded some people out. But all I got was a makeshift plucking of a keyboard of like the melody, along with this weird synth background music. So it was like synth melody with this, like with the notes plucked out. And so I was trying, it's really hard to hear like the progression of the song by that. So, but with a lot of these process, especially new shows, we'll do a work session. So I did have a work session where I went in and they were able to break down what they wanted from the song, Justin Paul got up and was like, this is where we really want this to push, and we really want to crescendo through here. And if we can do, he gave notes on like straight tone, where he would wanted vibrato, where I kind of can do what I wanted with it. At that point, they were like, you know, we just want, this is his like big power song. So they were able to give a lot of notes on that end. And then some of the scenes were similar to the movie in the way that, you know, this was the first scene that Eddie asked Rose to go on this date with him. The setting was similar, even though the words were a little different. So I was able to wrap my head around where the character was at in these different scenes, but it was tricky. And luckily, it was great that they gave me so many different times to go in. I actually went in 4 or 5 times, and each time it was like a separate work session, because Joe loves to work and he's an actor first, and he just loves to get that right and give us a chance to succeed, which was a huge gift. So anyway, enough about the auditions were amazing. I got to read with Lindsay, which was an incredible experience. And Josh Segura, I remember he played Bolin, who was like the worst of us, the worst of the Marines.
The worst of the bad, yeah.
And he came in with such a presence, and he's like one of the one of the best actors I've gotten to work with. He came in and he was like, took the audition by the throat and was like, this is my audition and you're just going to come along for the ride. And I had never experienced someone just kind of take a scene by the horns and go with it. I was like, whoa, this guy's a beast.
Wow.
So that was a cool experience.
To be. Yeah.
Exactly. He brought something to the character where they're like, whoa, this is exactly that, this character. But that's just Josh. He is a presence, and they casted him. I think what you have to remember, like you said, it's as simple as being yourself, but it's also part of what we love about this industry and why we love theater and working with a group of people is exactly that. It's a collaborative process. Mm-hmm. You're working with a group of people, not characters, for an extended period of time, and it is a team effort. So if people aren't gelling and you don't appreciate the people in the room, not just the characters, then it's going to be a rough process. That's why they're always looking for people that have the qualities of the characters. They're not looking for the characters.
Amen.
And everybody has these qualities in them, and everyone shows them differently. And it's up to you just to unapologetically do that every time. Bring your interpretation of those characteristics into the room and hope that that's what they're looking for, because that's all you can control.
It's amazing advice, and it's how you make it personal to yourself and bring yourself to a part, and it's exactly right. So
yeah,
yes. So
two more little.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
Go.
Just about the process itself. Part of why it was so impactful was Joe. The first 2 weeks of the rehearsal, we kind of started blocking out the show, and Lindsay and I have a lot of one-on-one scene work together. So it was us in a room with Joe a lot of the time. And I had always grown up with like a firm, like vocal training growing up. I learned to sing before I learned to act and dance. And that was kind of always what I knew. But this was a time where like he really just broke us down and then built us back up. We thought we were killing it for 2 weeks. He didn't really give us any notes. He was like, we'd end rehearsal an hour and a half early. And Lindsay and I were like, we're nailing this. Like Joe's got nothing. And then all of a sudden, like it was a week before we went into previews, or a week before we went into tech. And we had already blocked through the show. Then we went back and started like really working through it. And I got 2 words into my first scene with Lindsay, and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like,
what I've been doing?
I'm just, he's like, what are you asking? I'm like, I'm asking for a cup of coffee. He's like, no, you weren't. And I was like, I was. And so all of a sudden, and then he's like, all right, just do it again. So we started working our way through the scene, and every sentence or two, we'd stop, we'd address like what we're trying to achieve here. I think we maybe got through the scene for 3 hours. We got through this 4-minute scene twice. And then after like this 3-hour work session, like Joe was like, all right, I think that's good for today. And Lindsay and I walked out and just sat there and stared at the ground on the verge of tears, being like, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. So putting us in that place, knowing that we'd have to go back and reconnect these characters, and then finally achieving that during previews where you finally get the sign of approval and Joe says like, that was it. That was it.
I
I
have to say,
understand. And it was just like the craziest experience I'd never had before, and the acting training that I'd never really received. And from that, I was able to kind of reanalyze acting itself and like what it means to break down a scene, what it means to have an objective and to really go for that and take each scene as one piece at a time. It was crazy.
I have to say, like, good for you for being, such a young person and being able to to take that, because that's honestly how I like to work when it comes to especially meaty shows like that. And when it's like, it's so important that everything is grounded and real, and that you believe, that you are ordering a cup of coffee, and that a cup of coffee is full of coffee, and all that stuff, right? So it to take us to this real place and to transport the audience, into this environment. And I find so funny. I mean, when you're on Broadway or off Broadway or dealing with people like that, you probably have no choice but to just bunker down and deal with it. But I find that in the regional level that people get so sensitive. There's some that aren't, but there are people that, and I'm sure even on Broadway and all that as well, but so sensitive and so wrapped up in like, wanting to be told how good they're doing, as opposed to like really wanting to do the work and wanting to learn from it and make it better and make it the best you can be. And that's what the relationship is between an actor and a director. And it is about being told, of course, eventually that's it. You know what I mean? And you've earned it. And then it feels good. And you're like, yes. But like before then, if someone's just telling you all the time how good you are, like you're not learning anything from that. And so it's amazing that you had that experience at such a young age and were able to run with it and have it help develop you into the actor that you are. So kudos to you. And then lastly on that show, having Pasek and Paul, of course, before they were who they were, but were who they are. What was that like, looking back on that, going, they developed songs for me, like they you know what I mean? Like obviously there were things that had been written, but then obviously the show had to be then catered around the cast that they ended up with. So how is that? And like, do you still obviously keep in touch and all that?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are wrapped up in so much right now. I see them every now and then, and we'll touch base about something every year or two. But we're all doing our things, and they're taking off. They're crazy. But it was cool to be a part of their first New York production.
Their beginning, truly.
And they were working on this little show called Dear Evan Hansen at the time that they kept talking about. We were like, what is this thing? They're like, it's really good. I was like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
But it was in that experience. Joe definitely was the captain of the ship, and you had this room. Chris Catelli also was a choreographer on it, and he had just won the Tony for Newsies. So it was a crazy room. So him and Joe kind of were running the ship a little bit, and then you had Benj and Justin, who were noobs at the time, like brand new. This was their first go around, even though they had other stuff in development, but this was like the first big New York premiere. And that Peter Duchan, who's also a young writer who adapted the book. Joe worked them like he worked us. And I remember there was one point in the show, it's the Golden Gate Bridge scene between Rose and Eddie before Rose sings Before It's Over. Lindsay's like big middle of act 2 kind of turning point for her character. And there was a scene between the two of us that was really tricky to accomplish. And they couldn't figure out what that song needed to be and how the transition from the scene into the song would be. And I remember Peter, Benj, and Justin going out of the room. We wouldn't see them for like a day. They'd come back in with like a new version of the scene in the song, and they'd play it for Joe, and Joe would either give like the thumbs up or thumbs down. And there was a few times where he was like, no, it's not there yet. Close, but like almost there. And they'd be like, okay. And then watch them like go away for another day and come back with a new version of the scene. it was really cool to watch their process and and they're always so enthusiastic and they're always pouring everything they have into it. And they're such fun guys. I think that's also a reason why they're so successful is, you know, people like working with them. They're really smart, really energetic. But it was cool to watch Joe also kind of father that process in a way of orchestrating how to piece together this show, because it's one giant puzzle, and it's just about like moving things around and perfecting certain pieces so that it all fits together cohesively. But it was amazing to watch them work and watch Joe orchestrate that as well.
So
They're geniuses.
then your next experience was had to have been I would imagine, like jumping into a cold shower, because you go from basically being a part of the creative process and developing work. So even Carrie was being approached like a new work, right? And then Dogfight, a new work. And then you jump into one of Broadway's machines, Wicked.
Mm-hmm.
So, were you in it with Lindsay? Did you guys get to do it together?
Yeah, we had a lot of the same creative team that worked on Dogfight.
Right.
And they they told us at the end of the Dogfight run that they were interested in us going into the show. Lindsay had just done Godspell with Stephen Schwartz. They obviously knew her voice really well. She sang through the entire score for Joe and our music director, Brian Perry, because he was the MD at Wicked at the time. So she sang through the material, got cleared. I had to go in because nobody knew me as well. I had a full audition for Stephen Schwartz and Stephen Aremus and the team, and it all kind of it worked out. It was crazy. I got a text from Joe like a week after I went in, and he texted Lindsay and I, and he said, Elphaba meet Fiyero, Fiyero meet Elphaba. And I have the picture of that text like saved somewhere, because Wicked was also the first Broadway show that I ever saw. So to now have the opportunity to go into that 10 years later was kind of a cool full circle moment. But there was 8 months because Wicked is this thing, and they're constantly planning for the next replacements, because it's a moving ship, and either you got to jump on and hang on, or you're falling off. They didn't have an opening for both of us to go in together until we auditioned and got the roles in August, and then we weren't able to start rehearsal until March to go in April.
Whoa.
So there was like, you got the job, we'll see you in 7 months. And it's like, and we're like, oh, it's
wow.
great. But that is the not so glamorous truth of it all, is that there are these chunks of time where you have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to survive and make a living in between the moments. So there was like an 8-month period where I was auditioning a lot, trying to do reading, trying to make some money to survive in this new city. I was still like 21, trying to figure it out, and knowing that I had this amazing opportunity coming up. But that's the tricky part, that everyone thinks that, oh, Derek went like right into Wicked after Dogfight. There was a good chunk of time where I was kind of like,
you're like, okay, now what?
Trying to figure it out. Yeah, exactly.
I do need to pay bills between now and then. So
yeah, appreciate it. I'm super thankful, but like, I need to make money.
Yeah.
So but it was
how wild.
That's Broadway show. I got to go in with Lindsay into this moving ship. Having someone to work through that process together was amazing. And I remember that opening night, or the first night we went in, it was like neither one of us knew what was happening. You go on stage, you come off stage, and you're like, is the show still moving? Did I screw everything up? No? Yeah. Great. Yeah. On to the next scene. And then it wasn't until like in As Long As Your Mind in Act 2 where we just like sat there and were able to like sing the song in peace, being like, we're doing this. Like, we're actually getting through it.
Yeah.
Very cool night.
I saw her on, we were watching Fun Home together, watching our friend Beth kill in that show.
Yeah.
And,
oh my gosh.
She was talking about Wicked and just what a crazy just process and
spectacle it is.
pressure,
Yeah.
and just the pressure that comes along with it, and especially obviously for her role. But anyway, so moving along, you then get to create a show with Jason Robert Brown and move into Bridges in Madison County, play Kelly O'Hara's son, working with Hunter Foster, Stephen Pascal. I mean, what another incredible thing. And to have it be Jason Robert Brown, I think is I mean, he's, you know, like, it's like Lin-Manuel, Stephen Sondheim, Robert Brown. You know, those names are very important names, and I think actually Jason's actually going to come on with us in July, which is exciting. But
man, yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he's awesome. But he also is plagued with every single one of his shows never seems to get a run that it deserves on Broadway, and this, of course, being one of them. You know, kind of briefly, because I don't want to run out of time before we have to talk about all these other things, but briefly, what was that process like? Again, you're getting to create another show again, of course, based on a book and a film and all that, but getting to create another show, working with Jason, who's so highly intelligent, it's like almost hard to like get on the same, you can't even get on the same plane as him because it's like a totally different thing. You know, working in that environment, working with Kelly and Hunter, all these people, what was that experience like, and why do you think that show didn't run?
There's so many elements that go into the success of a Broadway show, whether it's the time of year that it's opening. There are like more popular seasons where there's a lot more tourist traffic in the city. That was like, we couldn't win. We started previews in January, which is usually like the darkest, coldest month. Like after the holidays, there's not as many people in the city. So that was hard to start that way. And then February rolled around. We had one of the coldest winters we've had in like 20 years or something. It was 20 degrees or below 20 for a month straight from January to February. We had multiple snow days. It was a crazy winter. So that also contributed to foot traffic on the street, people coming into the city, people going to shows. It was kind of a perfect storm for things to not go extremely right. But you never know why people won't come, why things succeed over others. It's a weird game. So, but I mean, obviously the material in the show was beautiful. He won a Tony Award for the music. It's a stunning score. It was an amazing cast. Bart Scher was directing. He's an incredible director. Having Kelly and Steve lead that company, kind of similar to how Marin took the show by the horns and ran with it. Kelly is exactly that same way. Right. Kelly's up there with the greats. She's beautiful, amazing, the sweetest person, definitely that leader. Listening to her and Steve Pasquale sing that score every night, I learned so much just about professionalism, maintenance. She had a toddler that she'd just given birth to, breastfeeding off stage and then having to go on stage. So and she had her 3 kids there all the time. Like, she was superwoman. And we all didn't know how she was doing it, but to watch her navigate all of that, her family, her professional life, and still put up the way she did, that was another unbelievable experience to watch, and I learned so much from both of them.
That's amazing.
And of course, JRB's.
I thought it was better. I thought the one thing that like they that I wish had, whether it was with makeup or whatever, like there was something about the age. They changed the age or the ages of the people and aged them down, and I think that there's something that feels so much more dangerous, so much more to lose, so much more like when you have even more life behind you. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're looking at making a huge shift in your life like that. And that was something for me. I just, because Kelly is capable of anything. And so even if they hadn't cast older but cast her. It would have been cool, I think, to see a slightly skewed, older version of that. But what a gorgeous.
It's a complicated subject matter and
Yeah.
what was so endearing about having the couple be older is because it was kind of their like a last shot for love, and that was a
Exactly.
problematic thing in our show, is that you have this like younger, hot,
super attractive couple.
that's like cheating on each other with his family. So
it makes it. I feel like it
was,
makes it a little bit more unlikable, because you're kind of like, well, like, why is it not? I mean, like, every relationship is different, but I felt like, to me, like, when you look at it, outsider looking in, you look at it, and to me, that was, I feel like, the one change I feel like that did a disservice to the show, in that it was like so important that everything you just said, and all the obvious that comes along with that, but still it doesn't take away from what an insane piece of art that score is, and such a privilege that in LA we got him he was conducting it, and how cool it was.
And he conducted it a bunch on Broadway too, which was so cool watching him
amazing
bleed this music. It was
it's amazing. Okay, so then you land a little show called Anastasia. Speaking Anastasia, which is, when I was younger, you were much younger, but when I was younger, that was a show that I literally, like, me and my family were like, well, this has to be a Broadway show. Like, this is a Broadway show. And that cartoon is one of the few non-Disney, now owned by Disney, but non-Disney cartoons that really made like a huge, I feel like, impact, especially like on a cult level even, and that score and everything. So what was it like? I mean, that was another thing. You're working with legends. You're working with the Ragtime team. You're working with the Gentleman's Guide team. You're working with, all these incredible people, which of course I want to get a great anecdote on another late and great, the legend, Terrence McNally. Unbelievable. And Stephen and Lynn are, of course, incredible, and Darko and Peggy, obviously, who's worked with us, amazing human. But yeah, working with Terrence, what was that like? And then just again, kind of briefly, I mean, it was amazing, of course, to reunite with Christy, I'm sure, after all those years, and and do this incredible show. But the two things I kind of want to focus on, or three things. What was it like? That was your longest run, right? You in a Broadway show, like that was your longest time in a Broadway show. So,
I was with the show for a year.
Yeah. So talking about, Terrence, what was it like doing a show for a year, 8 times a week, keeping it fresh? How do you navigate that, especially being the male lead in the show? It's not like just being a supporting part, or even, being in the ensemble. There are ways, I think, that are a little bit easier to keep those things kind of fresh, because sometimes, especially in the ensemble, there's room to kind of, mess with each other and do.
You don't have the responsibility of progressing the plot the same way.
Exactly.
You don't have to push the boat along. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a totally different thing. So having that, and then, So yes, I think Terrence. Yeah, the run. Let's start with Terrence. Let's do Terrence.
Okay. Terrence.
Oh wait, and the third thing before I forget about it was the show ended up being similar but largely different from the cartoon. So how did you navigate because obviously you're especially in a room with all those like titans, like it's not, you're along for the ride, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you're just like, tell me where to go, what to do, what to sing, and I'll do it. But you still, though, as part of the face of the show, you're dealing with people who are A, loving it, or B, going, where's the bat? Where's the villain? And
the diehards.
Exactly. Where's my cartoon? So just talking about that, and like even why some of those changes were made, would be cool to hear about. So Terrence.
Yeah. I'll start with Terrence. He's such an icon. One of the sweetest men. Him and his partner, Tom Curtihy, was one of our lead producers. They loved the show. Terrence was just like he was a presence. He was such a presence, and a serious guy a lot of the time, because he's so intelligent, that like sitting at a table and hashing through some of the scene work with him, you're like, I should just step aside. Like he's one of those people who are like, yeah, you're right, you're totally right, all the time. He's just so smart. But then also it would mean the world when he'd come up and give us compliment, like saying that like a scene was really working out. He was just one of those people you really wanted to make proud. I looked up to him a lot, and the way that him and Tom treated the company and ran that. We, like Christy and I, we're still somewhat young in the mix of the cast and the people, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. He's an amazing person, and to be a part of one of his last musicals was yeah, very, very special.
Yeah.
Also, the show, he was also very adamant about it. Him and Darko Tresniak, our director who directed Gentleman's Guide, they were very adamant about not making it like the movie and making it more historically driven, because they just didn't want to create a campy element in the show. Everyone loves Dark of the Night with the dancing bugs and Bartok and everything, but they were just like, that's not our show. That's not what we want to do. And so we respected that. And honestly, it made our jobs a lot more interesting and a lot more, and it allowed us the freedom to make these roles our own and not have to rely on these molds that were created by the movie.
Right.
So in that way, yes,
whatever John Cusack did, you're able to
exactly.
do
We were able to kind of release ourselves from that expectation of delivering what people loved about these characters in the movie, and we were able to kind of recreate them because we had so much new material to work with. So that was a gift during this process. Because I mean, like myself, growing up with this movie, Dimitri, everybody looks up to Dimitri. They're like, he's like the most like one of like the badass anti-princes, pardon my French, for younger ones that are watching. But he was like, he was like the roustabout, more the rough and tough one that you're like, man, he's cool. I want to be like that guy. And he was definitely a character growing up that I was like, man, if they ever make a musical for this, I would love to be able to do that. It'd be such a good musical. And I just happened to be the right age and the right time, right place. And it all kind of fell into place. Now working with Christy again, Christy and I actually got to read together in the room. I went in, sang my Dimitri material, ended up getting to sing in a crowd of thousands with Christy about an hour later for the team. And they told us that like when they saw us together and us and the way our voices meshed in the room, it was just one of those moments where they're like, this works. This is it. It's nothing that Christy and I can control. We were both so nervous, hadn't worked together in like 5 years, but there was a trust there, and it was a privilege that we knew each other and we trusted each other in that way, and we'd worked together. So I was like, I know what Christy's going to do here. She knows what I'm going to do. We're both here for each other. There's not really any unknowns. It was one of those kind of really, really positive, privileged situations that we were put in, and luckily it all worked out. But an amazing process, like you said, having to lead a company. It was kind of the first experience since Dogfight where I was put into that type of role. I mean, it's Anya's show, but Dimitri and Vlad are kind of there through a lot of the first part with her, and then through Act 2, it's kind of up to a group of us to really drive it home. And there is like a responsibility and a responsibility to do that. Oh, how do I say this? It is tricky. There's a certain way that you have to address those roles, knowing that you hold a lot of that, that bulk in your hands. You kind of there's a way you have to present yourself. There's a confidence that needs to be exuded, and there's a pace that you need to keep up too. Through Act 1, this will kind of go along to doing 8 shows a week for a year. It's a super taxing process, especially with this show when we were wearing our costumes were Russian garb, very heavy wool, multiple layers because we had quick changes. So I had to underdress a lot of my things. So all of Act 1, we're just running around with our heads cut off, like trying to make our next entrance, just sweating profusely. So that was one thing that I'd never experienced working on another show, is is the amount of like rest I needed to get, the amount of water I needed to drink, because I'd literally be soaked at the end of Act One. I'd go through probably like 3 to 4 liters of water a show, and I still would be dehydrated. So that was like another thing, is learning hydration is key, making sure that you eat properly.
Saying goodbye to any
And
social life.
right, no, be responsible. Like if you
Yeah.
feel your voice going to, you're out talking, you feel your voice going, and knowing that you have a 5 show weekend coming up, you're like, yeah, I should probably go home. So that was a big learning experience too. I hadn't had that physical of a role before. So learning how to navigate that 8 show week over such a long period of time, we were lucky to have a long, healthy run on Broadway, was a challenge. But after about 3 months, I learned what I needed to do. I learned places in the show to pace yourself. That's also key. Learning in a show where you are kind of running with it and playing a principal role, it's important to find those places where you can take a breather, regroup, pace yourself through it. Because if you're going 100% the whole time, one, it's not very interesting to watch. A person just like flying around the whole time, like
Yeah.
there has to be some ebb and flow to it. But you just, yeah, it's all about pacing yourself, learning what works for you, what you need to be healthy and succeed and prepare, so that you're able to do every show to be 100% every show.
So a couple other
Derek,
things
I
I want
love
to.
you.
Oh, someone. Oh.
Love you too.
I love it. So,
Me too.
thank you. And everyone, try to keep yourselves muted, and then we will have a Q&A in a little bit for sure. But thank you for expressing your love. What we will last couple things I want to talk about, and then we'll open it up for a brief Q&A. You've been so giving of your time, and I want to get you off the call.
This is great. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, not at all. No. You're amazing. Jagged Little Pill. Whoa. It's like Hair and Dear Evan Hansen and Rent had a love child, and then
with like a little next to normal sprinkled on top.
With the next to normal sprinkle on it. Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah. And what an insanely important show, dealing with so many relevant issues on so many different levels. So just quickly, what is being a part of that process, especially like you've been a part of it from almost the very beginning, aside from the like very first reading of it or whatever, like you've been a part of it for basically the whole time.
I did the first reading in New York. They might have had another separate reading, but it
was like the one with like Adina Menzel, I think, or something like that. Yeah. Okay, you were in that one.
I did that one. Yeah.
I was wrong. Okay, so then so been a part of it from the very beginning, and I think you're one of the only ones, right? Like, or one of the few?
It was, me, Celia Gooding, who plays Frankie in the show, Lauren Patton, and Nora Shell.
Okay.
Who's an ensemble member. I think it was the 4 of us.
Okay.
From the very beginning. And then Catherine Gallagher is the only person to ever play her role, but her role actually didn't exist in the very first reading, and then the plot had changed by the second reading. Sorry.
And one of the characters now, it has a trans actor that covers it, and now the being completely redefined. My sister was telling me about that as to who can play the part and all that, which is just incredible. Again, the things that the show is doing for just awareness and opportunities for actors, of all kinds, which is amazing. So working with Alanis Morissette, I mean, this album came out in my youth, and it was a big influence. I mean, it's what an incredible album that is. So doing a jukebox musical and making these things that are already so highly charged and emotional, that album is a very emotional album. So it's no wonder that the show is what it is. But what was that like working with her, and then just seeing the show grow from the very beginning to now, and then lastly being in a show that had to shutter because of COVID, and kind of what that process was like. So
being a part of this from the very beginning was, I think it was the first Yeah, first time I've been a part of a project from the ground up, from the very first reading.
Yeah.
I have a lot of similarities and to Nick and things that I relate to him on. But there's like another sense of ownership to that, because you've been a part of every single change, because every change that they made was directly correlated to something you were doing. Is kind of a cool experience, but also weirdly revealing in a way. So it's been a tricky role to navigate, because like you said, we deal with so many socially and politically relevant themes and topics in the show. My character is involved in a rape assault case, where my character is a witness to that.
Yeah, 13, it's also like a 13 Reasons Why like sprinkled in there. There's like, literally so many themes in it.
Yeah. But it's been a tricky, emotional, like Anastasia being probably the most physical role I've ever had to do. This is definitely the most emotionally charged role and experience that I've had, because we deal with so many topics. And like you said, we have a trans person playing, covering Joe in the show, and the casting in the show has been very specific of who covers who, to make sure that we maintain that integrity, because it's really important to us, about honoring Alanis's themes, her messages and her songs, and also who we're portraying in the show. Like you said, there are so many different angles to the show and so many different things we're dealing with. And to watch it all come together the way it did, and watch how Diablo Cody, our writer, for instance, is brilliant. She wrote Juno, Young Adult, United States of Terra.
Like
She's amazing.
The perfect person to do this show.
The perfect person.
Yeah.
To watch her be, I've also never been a part of a situation or a production that was so collaborative. This is her first.
Is like, I mean, that's a great, another perfect person to be a part of this show. Yeah.
Yeah. So between her and Diablo, we would have these sessions where before we'd put anything on our feet, we'd sit at the table, we'd read through it, we'd discuss it, we'd read through it again, we'd make changes. Having the freedom to have that kind of input and have it be received that way is so rare. And I think is part of is definitely, I don't know, it adds to everyone's ownership of it. And everyone is that much more invested in what they're doing because they've contributed in that way. And it was a gift to have Diablo be so open to that. This is her first development process in the theater, and she's been so enthusiastic about it and loves getting back to and changing things and perfecting things. She's like, she's like, what I hate about writing for film and TV is like, you write it and it's shot, and if you disagree with something, it's too late. There's no going back and reshooting it or rewriting it. It is what it is, despite how you feel about it. She was like, what's amazing about theater is that it is ever changing. It's never done. You can always make changes. You can always make it better. So she loved that, loved hearing our feedback, and the fact that we got to contribute in that way was super special. And yeah, and now we opened in December. We were really lucky that we were a fall opening, because we were able to get a few months under our belt of running and having a successful run before the shutdown. So unlike some shows, usually the popular time to open a show is the spring, because it's closer to the awards season and you have a better chance of using some of that momentum to help your show. But in this case, it worked against some of those shows that were supposed to be opening up in April that never had a chance to do so. It's been really, really tough to see your friends, your colleagues, the people that have worked so hard and got so excited about these productions now either have to wait till who knows when till they can do their show again, and some of them won't get a chance to open. So it's been a really hard time for live events, especially theater in particular. But we were some of the lucky ones to have a successful 3-4 months before the shutdown to now be in a better place to come out of this thriving. And I know our producers are really motivated and staying positive and keeping us in the know in regards to when we may be able to get back in the theater and get our show back and going. And I do think it's important that we do, given one of the major themes of our show is recognizing oneself, self-help and healing. We all have different ways of healing. We all have different ways of approaching hardship and trauma. And I think our show does sheds a very positive light on that, and how we can be there for each other and how we can help each other through traumatic events and through traumatic times. So I think now more than ever, our show is needed. So I hope we come out and are able to bring that positivity to people and to share that with people again.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's nice to hear that you are a part of a show that will come back. You know, there are many shows that are not, and so it's great to, you know, I'm happy for you as a friend that you'll have a job to come back to, and
Thanks.
of course for such an important show, I think it's great that it's gonna get to reach that many more people. So the last thing I want to ask about real quick, and then we're gonna take 2 lucky questions from our audience here that Gigi's gonna pick at random. There's so many great questions, by the way, guys, in the chat, but as we know, we could be here all day talking to him, and well, we can't. So so anyway, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, man, that show, what a fun show. I remember someone showing me the theme song, and I was like, I have to watch this show.
It's brilliant. It's genius.
I dove down that rabbit hole. It is so much fun. Just you know, DJ what is it?
Finger Blast.
Yeah, Finger Blast. Oh, good. Your character name. It's so good. Douglas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So what was that like being on that set? And is your character arc, has it come to an end? Do you like what? Is the show?
Yeah, I think we've bid adieu to DJ Finger.
Yeah,
I think he had his last hurrah this past season when they did his mockumentary episode.
Yeah.
But see, I when I initially auditioned for this, it was just a guest star. It was just like, this is this one episode where this goody two shoes, you know, like Ken doll guy who's a dog masseuse ends up, you know, what's her name? Oh my gosh.
I know. I'm blonde, amazing.
Yes. Her character takes me under her wing and then inspires me to be like follow my dreams of becoming a DJ. And then, you know, that episode happened. It was incredible.
Jane Krakowski. Thank you, Dylan.
Jane Krakowski. Oh my gosh. Yes. Hey,
how
Dylan.
do you forget that name? Yeah.
What's up, dude?
Woo.
Yeah, so they was supposed to be that one-off. I had worked with Carol Kane actually on Wicked. She was our Madame Morrible in Wicked. So it was amazing to get to do that with her because I had already worked with her, which was crazy.
She's a riot. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, she's so funny.
And Titus Burgess, I mean, like, what a presence.
Also, like, such a presence and such a sweet guy. And it was a great, because it was a room full of comedians and theater personalities and people that worked in the theater. It was such a cool environment. I had never gotten that opportunity of working on a comedy and getting the freedom to try new things and fail and have people laugh and mess up takes and be able to do that again without people getting mad or irritated that it was happening. So it was cool. It was a very freeing environment, which kind of set me at ease because they're all so incredible. I was just trying to keep up. So then when they asked me back eventually for in season 2, 3, and then I had like another little one-off, and then all of a sudden they reached back out and they were like, we'd like to have Derek back for an episode for this last season. But I didn't know what it was going to be at the time. It was during Anastasia, and we were able to work it out with Anastasia that I was able to film the episode. So then I get the script and realize that it's kind of like a behind the scene, or like a story about DJ Fingerblast, a character who I really wasn't cast as, because I was cast as Douglas, who eventually became this character for a little bit. Right. And now they wanted to create an entire episode around this person who I didn't even know who he was. So I was like, getting the script and reading it and being like, oh man, I'm gonna really have to figure this out now and like figure out what like this character's quirks were. How stupid is he really? Like, I don't know.
So funny.
So it was a really cool experience. It was getting to make that and yeah, it was very cool. Very
and it's nice when
freeing.
when you do these things for TV or for film, because that you get to have for forever. For Broadway shows, you know, they live in your memory, or if you really want to, you go down to Lincoln Center. But I mean, like, it's something you don't get to, and hopefully, I'm really hoping, because you haven't been a part of a show yet that has been filmed for like great performances or something. Do you know what I mean? Or like, I don't know if they're available on Broadway HD. I don't have Broadway HD. I probably should. But for Jagged Little Pill, I'm really, really hoping it's such an important show that gets some kind of wider release. But anyway, you guys, amazing. We've had Derek Klena for far too long, so we're gonna pick two people to ask a question. Gigi at random. If you want, raise your hand in your screen if you have a question for.
I see Brittany Anderson first. Brittany, go ahead. Oh my God!
No, she was just like clapping.
Oh.
Go ahead, Brittany.
No, Brittany says she was just clapping. She
was just clapping. Okay. Yeah. Well, then I see Saif. Saif?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Oh my God. Wait. Let me just think. Okay. Hello. First of all, I want to say I love you so much. And oh my God. And
thank you.
I think I'm going to say this in perspective to everyone, Leah, Lena, and everyone here, and Ahmed, that we all love you. And I just wanted to ask, what did you feel like? How did you know you were gonna be in like an actor? Like, when did you start your acting career? I have no idea.
I always, growing up, it was always a dream. It was always something that I aspired to be. I was like, that would be amazing. Like, one of my dreams was to be a broadcast journalist, to play professional baseball, and or to be on Broadway. So it was always something that like I knew I wanted to strive towards. I had a love for theater, and I had a passion for sports and baseball, and luckily my dad would coach a lot of my sports teams, and that made it easier for me to do both. I had very supportive parents. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I think my grandma's watching too. Hi, Grandma. So I always grew up wanting to do it, but I honestly, I was torn. I was torn until college, and I think it took me, like, deciding to playing baseball in college had always been a goal of mine since I was little. So when I had that opportunity to play baseball, I was so excited. I kind of just jumped at it, not really thinking that I wouldn't want to play professional baseball. So I had the experience of playing my freshman year at school, realized that, like, no, my heart's really in theater, that I love performing, I miss performing, that's what I want to do. And then deciding that psychology would be a decent major that could, help me in that field as well. It wasn't until like college where I realized, like, okay, after I'm like at peace with my sports life, but now I'm gonna pursue theater, and this is really what I want to do. It wasn't until college, I guess, that I was like, I want to do this for a career. Yeah.
Amazing. We have one more, and then I forgot to tell you, we have a rapid fire questions that I'm going to ask you, so you got to be ready for that, and that's going to be
okay.
All right.
Okay, our last question. We have so many. Bree W. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta love the background.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
I love you so much. Sorry.
Hi,
I just wanted to ask, once you did find out that like theater was your passion, how did you keep going? Because obviously you got judged. Sorry, so much for that. Because everyone's always like, oh, you're never gonna succeed. So how did you like have the motivation to keep going on that trajectory?
It also happened when you were so young too. So it was like, yeah.
It's tricky. I mean, there were a lot of like random experiences. I guess, look, part of our industry this is basically our industry in a nutshell. We audition, basically, we prepare for a test, we give a speech or recite something to a group of people and get judged, and they either tell us that we passed the test or we failed the test. Most of the time, you know, that is our life. Most of the time you're going to fail the test, and it's those times where you don't succeed, or you stumble in an audition, or you're not as prepared as you should have been, that it's easy to get down on yourself. It's easy to get discouraged and say, like, maybe this isn't for me. I was able to recognize that as a challenge. I knew that I didn't want to feel that way. I knew that preparation was huge for me. If I wasn't completely off book, I knew I wasn't going to have the best audition I can have. So I think being as prepared as you can possibly be, and having a plan going into an audition, regardless of the outcome, that's all that you can control. And I think once I realized that, it took, and of course, you know, not getting a role or trying and failing in something, it gets discouraging, but once you realize that that's all you can control, and the rest is, you know, you just tear up your sides and throw it in the trash and just go on to the next one, that I was able to kind of like dismiss some of the rejection and the more anxiety ridden parts of our profession, and really focus on, like, what's my goal in this? What can I control? How well can I be Derek? And not, you know, try not to compare myself to anyone else. And so when you do accomplish that, and when you do actually get the role, and you do all the things that you set out to do, all of a sudden there's a huge sense of accomplishment and a newfound belief that you can do that. It's an uphill climb, and I was lucky that I had success at a young age to kind of gain that confidence early on that, like, you can really do this. But honestly, all the steps are the same. The preparation, bringing yourself into a room, all it takes is one. All it takes is being at the right place at the right time, the right people seeing you do the right thing.
And I would say persistence is key. We had a panel today where we had, day before yesterday, we had two of my friends, also Broadway actors, Elena Waters and Jason VC, and they were saying, Elena was in the original company of Sister Act, among many other shows, and she said there were women making their Broadway debut at 50 years old. And you just never know if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and it's going to be at the time it's meant to be. It could be when you're young, it could be when you're 50, it could be later than that. It largely depends. So if you love it and you know you're good at it, just keep going, right?
All you can control is being yourself and being prepared. To piggyback on that, I didn't say this before, but I actually auditioned for Anastasia 3 times over the course of 2 years. The first 2 times I didn't get it. And the third time, for whatever reason, the casting director had changed. The first 2 times I went in, I was like, man, I'm really right for this. It's a role that I've wanted for a long time. I was prepared. I went in, the table, the directors and the writers were sitting there, and they just looked tired and kind of like they had already found their person. And I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. I did my audition, went out, didn't get the role. Came back around 6 months later for another workshop of the show. I went in, same attitude, didn't go as well as I thought. I was like, oh man, this, like, maybe I'm not as right for this as I thought. Came around another time, a year later, new casting director, new room. I walk in, all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, good to see you. And I was like, what changed from last year? I was the same person. I was as prepared as I was last year, but for whatever reason, they were excited to see me that day. I was able to sing with Christy, and things just kind of worked, although they hadn't worked the 2 times prior. And that's just like a perfect scenario where it's like, there's so many things you can't control of how the day is going, how the process of a show is going, that if you just go in as yourself, as prepared as you possibly can be, with an objective, accomplish that goal, you can leave with your head high, and you can let the times where you don't get the role just be learning experiences.
Amazing. Okay, I have some rapid fire questions. Kyle, go. Okay, what's your favorite thing in your closet right now?
The favorite, what? The music is so loud.
Turn it down. Kyle, turn it down. Yeah.
My favorite thing in my closet right
Yes.
now? Oh gosh, a leather jacket.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
That preparation is key.
Do you have any pets?
No.
Favorite movie ever?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, so good. Describe yourself as a teenager in 3 words.
I don't know, Troy Bolton. High school.
If you could play a role that is not of your gender, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Pass.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve? Loading the dishwasher wrong.
Oh yeah.
My
Dark
wife
chocolate.
is
Dark
cracking
chocolate
up.
or milk chocolate?
Milk.
If you could be from any other decade or era, which would it be?
80s.
Wow, okay. If you were not in the theater industry, what would you be doing? I'm assuming
I'd be a psychologist or a journalist.
genre of music, what's your favorite?
Classic rock.
You could have any 3 people, dead or alive, over for dinner. Who would they be?
Oh. Hugh Jackman, Norbert Leo Butts, and President Obama.
If God forbid, if your house is on fire, what 2 items would you grab that are not like your wife?
My laptop and a signed piece of sheet music from
Oh
a
yes.
composer.
Lastly, most importantly, iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Hey. You
What are we,
guys,
cavemen?
I know, right? Okay, please, a huge virtual round of applause for this incredible, incredible artist. We are so thankful. This has been so much fun, and I think our longest session yet. It's also wild for me because I just know you as Derek, but to see all these like people just like it's just it's so great. It makes my heart happy. Thank you. And if you're not following 3D Theatricals on social, do that. Follow us. If you're not following Derek on social, do that and follow him. As we leave, you can unmute yourselves, say goodbye, say thank you.
Love you.
Bye. From Portugal.
Love
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you. All the way from Portugal.
So much, guys.
Wow, we have people in Portugal watching.
Thanks, Derek.
Yes.
Hey
Here.
guys, everyone stay safe. Sending lots of love.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Derek.
you.
Thanks,
We'll talk
everybody.
soon.
jealous.
And Derek's
Lots
gonna
of
be
love
back
from
on to teach
Portugal.
a master class, y'all. He's gonna be teaching a master class for auditioning and stuff, so you won't want to miss that. We'll let you know what's up with that. All right.